in the UK at the minute, we are coming into spring, and I thought it would be really nice to celebrate by drawing this little chicken together. I'm drawing with Faber-Castell polychromos, and I have a supply list and a free line drawing that you can download and trace, and I'll leave a link to both of those in the description. So if you want to draw this little chicken with me, go and grab your line drawing, grab your supply list, and then I'll meet you back here, and over the next couple of hours I'll take you through the project step by step. Really hope you enjoy the project. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you do, and let's get started. Okay, this is the line drawing which you can download and print off to use. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get this onto my art paper. If I just close the cover so you can see, this is the art paper that I'm using for this. You can use any paper that you want, but this is the paper that I've decided to use. It's a really good value paper. For the price of it, I think it's a really good paper. Not as expensive as something like the Saunders Waterford or the Fabriano Artistico, but it's still a really good paper. So that's what I'm going to use for this one today. It is a hot press paper. That's what the HP is, hot press. So it is a hot press paper, and that means if I just turn this back over again, it means that it doesn't have too much texture, so you don't have to put too many layers down to fill that tooth in. So this is what I'm going to use, but obviously I need to get this line drawing down onto the art paper. So I've just got a piece of scrap paper underneath. I'm going to turn my line drawing over, and I'm going to take a soft pencil. So I've got a 5B pencil, but a nice soft pencil, and I'm going to just hold it on its side and scribble some graphite all over the back. You can of course buy transfer papers, you can use that as well. That's entirely up to you. It's just preference. I find this quick, I find it easy, I find the outlines, once I've transferred it onto my work, I find them easy to erase out because obviously it's just pencil on the back, but it is preference. Okay, and you just pick it up, and I just sort of tip it up so that I can see, you can already see the dark coming through. I tip it up to make sure it's covered everywhere. I can see that it's not covered on the bottom of the foot there. And it doesn't take too long because obviously I've got the pencil tipped over on its side. Let's just have a look again. I can see that that's there. So I'm going to put that piece of paper. The reason that I put the card underneath to do that is because otherwise my board has got quite a bit of texture, and it will just pick up all the texture of the board as I do that. So let's put that to one side. This is my art paper now that I'm bringing in. I'm going to position it somewhere towards the middle, nice and neat. And then I'm just going to hold it in place with, you could use washi tape, masking tape, something to just hold that in place there. I'm going to put a couple of bits across the top. I want the bottom free so that I can keep lifting it up at the end to make sure that it's actually transferred. So I don't want to stick it all the way around. I just want to stick the top of the line drawing down on the paper. I'm going to go around the outline, and trace all the way around the outline. I find when I'm tracing it makes sense to do perhaps like the nose, the eye first, because that's where my pencil is the sharpest. So it's got a nice point. And it's just a case of transferring around the line or the lines. It's just a guide. And I've put quite a bit of information on this line drawing. So that hopefully it's easier for you to see where I'm working throughout the tutorial. But also if you just want to print this and use this as a colouring page, for instance, you've got some of that detail in there already. So, but you don't have to put all of this information into your line drawing. That's entirely up to you. I've put as much in as I think the line drawing can cope with. Obviously it's not a very big drawing, so there's only so much that I'm going to put in there, otherwise it's going to get quite overwhelmed with the line drawing. But hopefully enough that you can see easily where I'm working. And I'm just going to get a suggestion of this pattern on this wing at the back. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. There we go. And then let's just come down onto the legs. That is repositionable tape at the top there, so I'm just going to hold it as I lift the paper just to make sure that it's transferred. And then it's a case of just playing spot the difference with the line drawing. Make sure that everything is down, or as much of the information as you want down. And I sort of check, you know, the important parts. So you might want to check the nose, the beak, perhaps the wing, because there's quite a bit of pattern there. Check that we've got I can see that I've come off the end of didn't put the graphite all the way down to the bottom, so I can fix that quite easily. I'm just going to go back over with a little bit of graphite. Don't need to take it off. Let's just put a little bit of graphite in there now. It's either that or you can freehand it in, but you know, it's very easy to just put the graphite. There you go. It's transferred now. So I think that's it. Let's make sure that everything is down there that I want. Yeah, I think that's enough. I've got enough information there. I'm just going to check the eye, make sure it's transferred so that you can see where we're going. Okay, I think that's it. I think we've got enough of that line drawing down to be able to take it off. There we go. Okay, I've got a little bit of tissue paper down just to protect the paper from any oils or any hand cream that is on my hand. So that's just going to rest under my hand there. I'm going to take my dark sepia pencil. These are all polychromos pencils today, but whatever really dark brown you're taking, I'm going to use the dark sepia pencil. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to work around this little eye here. So I've got a sharp pencil because we're working with some really sort of small spaces there. So I'm going to keep my pencil quite relaxed, and I'm just going to very gently work around the outside of this eye. Just filling that space in. The other thing that I'm going to do at the minute is there's just that little highlight there, and I'm going to just work around that highlight just to remind me that that highlight's there. It's not really visible on the reference photograph, but I've decided to put it in just to add an extra little bit of life in the chicken's eye. It won't necessarily stay as big as that, but I've just put that there just to remind me that there is a highlight there, and then I can close it up or add colour into it as I want to at a later date, but I'm going to leave that there. I find it's always a really good idea to leave perhaps a bigger space than you need and then go back and fill it up afterwards, close it up afterwards if that's what you need to do. So I'm just making sure that I've got a nice line around there. Whilst I've got this dark sepia in my hand, there is, and I haven't taken any of the graphite off yet because I'm working with a really dark pencil. And I know that the pencils that I use, so if I just go back to the pencil that I use the Mars Lumograph for putting my line drawings down. And I know that they never sort of put out too much graphite. So I will need to take my kneadable eraser and take some of the graphite lines off. But I know that when I'm working with a really dark pencil like this, I don't need to worry about dabbing the eraser onto the paper straight away, because they don't actually put out, they're not that sort of dusty with the graphite. I find them a really useful pencil. There are obviously other pencils. Some will be darker and, you know, softer and put out more graphite. And some, even though they're a B pencil and they're in the B range, they may not put out quite as much graphite. Every manufacturer is obviously different. Whilst I've got this dark sepia in my hand, so that's what I was just saying, I'm going to go over, there's a little dark bit right on the edge of the eye there. So I'm going to get these dark bits in quite early on so that they become landmarks and so that we know, you know, sort of where we're working. The other thing that I'm going to do is just on the outside of this eye that we've just put in, there is also another little edge. So I'm going to take my dark sepia and just plop that in. You can see it's just a little dash and a little dash. And that will probably do. There is another little one underneath as well. We've got to be quite careful because can you see there's a gap between the edge of the eye and that line that I've just put in? And that's quite important because the chicken's got an extra little sort of ring around his eye where his eyelid is. So that's quite important. I'm just going to extend that one out just a little bit. I don't need to put a whole ring all the way around the eye. That will probably do. And if I need to go back and put more in again, I can go back and put more in. I've just joined that up a little bit at the top there. Okay, so we've got the dark sepia bits in there. The other thing that I will do whilst I've got this, I'm going to just put one little curve on the top of the nostril, just so that we know where the nostril is. And that way, we are hopefully not going to get lost as we go through the project. So I'm just going to do that. The other little thing that I want to just get in place now to make it hopefully easier for you as you go through, there's a little line there that's running along, it's basically along his neck. And I'm going to use my dark sepia, and just in that bit, all I need is a little line, just so that we know. That's going to create another landmark for us, and just so that we know where the edge of the neck is. It's not really important, you don't have to do it this way around, but I think it will be quite useful for the video so that we can all sort of stay together and we'll know where these landmarks are, and they will be, you know, quite useful for us to work out where we are as we go through the video. I'm not pressing on really hard when I'm putting these marks in. I'm just putting a mark in with the dark pencil so that they become a landmark. Okay. I'm going to come back to the eye and I'm going to fill this dark eye in. Now, again, you can't really see it on the reference photograph, but there will be a darker pupil in the middle, which I'm going to go in and put in with a black. And then there's just a slightly lighter bit for the iris around the outside edge of the eye. So I'm going to use my Bista from the Polychromos, but you can use any sort of lightish brown that you've got. It doesn't have to be Bista, anything you've got. And if you don't have the Bista, you can just go in with the yellow that we're going to use. This is the light yellow ochre that we're going to use in the feathers. So you could go in with that as well. It doesn't really matter, just something to put a little bit of life into the eye. So this is the Bista, and I'm going to use little circle strokes. Now if I come back to my scrap piece of paper, it's going to be little oval strokes like this. Oval strokes that all sort of join up. So if I just sort of separate them out a little bit, oval strokes like that. They're all going to join up and create a nice even coverage. That's what we're going to do. So let's work into this little eye. I'm going all the way over the eye apart from that highlight. I'm just going to stay out of that highlight for the minute, and I've just got a nice even coverage in there. And then I'm going to take a nice sharp black pencil. I'm going to use my black pencil, and I'm going to get this this pupil, I could say the iris, but it's the pupil right into the middle. So all I'm doing now, this isn't on the line drawing, but all I'm doing is putting a little circle that just comes around the side of that highlight. See, I'm just putting a little circle in there. I'm staying away from the edge so that the vista still shows through on the edge. You can see that it's showing through there. And then I'm going to take my cold grey 1, which is my lightest cold grey pencil, and I'm going to bring a little bit, just tap it in really, tap into that highlight, because obviously we don't want it bright white, we don't want it the colour of the paper, we want to just tap a little bit of colour in there like that. And that's pretty much it. I might just go back to my black and I might just redefine and reinforce that black in there. And you can shape your little highlight now if you want to shape it. Mine's pretty much okay as it was. I've just gone around and closed it up just a little bit, just sort of worked over the edge of it, and obviously made the pupil just a little bit darker. So we've just got a little bit more life in the eye than is on the reference photograph. The reference photograph just looks a little bit flat, so I decided to do that. I'm going to start to get some colour onto the head now, and I'm going to use a warm grey 1 as a base layer over the top. Even though the bird is yellow, or it's got yellow tones in it, I'm still going to use the greys underneath to just sort of tone it down. I don't want the yellows becoming too bright, so I'm just going to use the greys underneath to desaturate the yellows just a little bit. So I'm going to use the warm grey 1 over the top, and this cold grey 1 that I've just picked up, I'm going to bring underneath, where I can see that it's just a little bit more of a cooler, bluer colour underneath. Now, if you have a lot of graphite and you want to take your graphite lines out, and obviously you don't need to take them out, you know, do whatever's comfortable for you, but if you want to take the graphite out, this is where a kneadable eraser is really useful, because you can just dab onto the drawing. Can you see that pencil's coming off quite easy? Now, I'm not going to take too much off because I can already see that I'm losing that on the video. I can just about see it on the drawing, but you're not going to really see where I'm working. So I'm going to leave mine in as much as possible so you can see where I'm working. But that's how I would take the lines out if you want to take the lines out. Just take your kneadable eraser and just dab it on. Then I'm going to come back to these two pencils that I was just talking about, so the warm grey 1 and the cold grey 1. And I'm going to, I've got nice sharp pencils again, and I'm going to work back in the direction that the fur's going on the top of the head. And if I just grab a darker colour and my piece of paper again, I'm actually just going to use backwards and forwards colouring strokes, just nothing more complicated than a colouring stroke backwards and forwards. Nice even pressure, and get that colouring strokes back and forth. If you find that you're not getting an even pressure and you're getting lots of extra sort of lines showing, go back to these circles, but keep it going in the direction, keep the ovals going in the direction that the fur's going in. There you go. So I'm going to take the warm grey 1 to start with, and I'm going to work around the eye in the direction that I can see the feathers are going in. Now, these are feathers that we're drawing today, but actually this is going to be very similar to how you would draw fur. So this will also be really quite useful for animals as well, for drawing animals. I'm just going to work all the way back to the edge. I'm going to bring it down to the beak. I've got my pencil tipped over on the side, and that helps me to get that lovely even pressure, to get that even coverage. I'm going to take the pencil all the way back looking at that reference photograph so that I can see which direction the fur's moving around the head in. I'm going to take this kneadable eraser and just, these lines are a little bit strong here. I'm going to put some colour all the way over this head, and those graphite lines are just a little bit strong. Let's work all the way over. Okay, let's work around and underneath. This little bit here, this is where I'm going to bring in the cooler grey, and also a little bit at the back I'm going to bring in the cold grey one that I was using. But everything else I'm going to work around. So I'm just working around the beak with this warm grey one. I keep picking up my eraser because I can see that just on the edge there, there's quite a graphite, quite a strong graphite line. So let me just draw that back in with the pencil so you can see where I'm going. So I'm going to work all the way down to this line that we put in at the start, but I'm leaving this space for the cold grey and I'm leaving this space for the cold grey. And I'm leaving the graphite lines fairly strong. Much stronger than I would leave them if I was drawing it without the camera on. So this is the cold grey one, and I'm going to bring the cold grey underneath the eye. And as to where I start and stop, it doesn't really matter. These warms and colds are sort of mixing in together, so it's not really important. Don't worry about where to sort of stop and start. I'm also going to bring the cold grey up here. Just using that colouring stroke to bring the grey towards the back of this neck. So we've got those greys down, and like I say, there's still quite a lot of graphite in there that you might want to have taken out. Now I'm still going to go over the top and build in the yellows now. I'm going to start with the cream from the polychromos, but if you've only got ivory or something, you know, whatever sort of creamy ivory colour you've got, that's fine. But I'm going to start with the cream, and these greys are just going to help to keep these colours just a little bit more muted. So I'm going to work around the edge of the eye again, bringing the pencil back in the direction that I can see that it's going in. When I get to the end, I'm going to lift my pencil off the paper. If I come back to my piece of paper again, when I get to the end, I want to create a bit of a feathered feel. So I'm just going to lift my pencil off. So I'm putting it down and lifting it off so that I get this lovely tapered feathered edge to the edge of the pencil, to the edge of the feather texture. So let's bring this all the way, pretty much all the way over the bird's head actually. Just working backwards. When I'm in the middle of the space like this, I can just use those backwards and forwards colouring strokes. When I get to the edge, I will feather. You might want to take out those graphite lines as you're going. I'm leaving them in because otherwise, especially working with a light colour, I don't think you'd see where I'm working at all, but I will be able to disguise some of them. But they're a little bit heavier than I would have them. So I'm going to work around with this cream over the blue the coal grey, which had that blue tone to it. Just staying out away from the beak, working down under the bird's head. And I'm just looking for an even blanket coverage, so I'm not looking to really put texture in at this stage. You can see we're just building up some colours of the chick. There we go. I'm going to bring in a slightly darker yellow. This is the light yellow ochre from the Polychromos, and I'm going to work again. I always sort of start around the side of this eye. It just seems a nice place to start to get the curves going on the head. So I'm going to work around the side of the eye. Now this time I do want to bring a little bit of texture into the feathers, so I am coming back to my piece of paper. This is the pencil stroke that I'm using, putting my pencil down and sort of flicking it off at the end. I find the faster that I do this, the more random the pencil strokes are and the better the fur looks. I don't want to think about it too much. I want to just get a nice random coverage of the pencil. I'm using this light yellow ochre, and I'm taking it right into that eyelid around the side of the eye, so right up to the edge of the eye. Looking at the reference photograph so that I bring the pencil around in the direction, as if it was sort of going over the contours of the little chicken's face. I'm going to work up towards, we've got this darker bit up here, haven't we? So just going to work up towards this darker bit at the top. I'm not pressing on hard, so if I want the pencil to be slightly darker or more saturated, I just sort of concentrate the pencil lines there a little bit. So I'll go over it and over it and over it. I don't want to press on any harder, I just want to concentrate those pencil lines over. Now as I'm sort of taking the colour a little bit darker, I am just going to go in now and start taking out some of these pencil lines a little bit, because hopefully you can see it all showing up a little bit better on the camera. There we go. So I'm going to take that dark bit just over the top of the head there. Let's have a look. We've also got a slightly darker bit just working around and over the eye. I don't have to get it all right on this one layer of pencil. It'll take a few layers. And even though this paper isn't cotton paper, so it's not a cotton paper like the Saunders Waterford or like the Fabriano Artistico, it is still quite a strong paper. It's the cotton that makes the paper strong. So a cotton paper is quite a strong paper. It'll take lots of erasing, lots of layers. It's quite a strong surface. But I find that this is still a really, really good paper. And when I was much younger and, as a youngster, I was obviously always on a budget with what papers I bought, because it was always my pocket money that I was using to buy the papers. And this was a really good, this was the paper that I used to use a lot. I don't know, hopefully you can get it in other countries as easily as you can get it in the UK. It's a UK manufacturer, but hopefully you can find it as easy. If not, there are lots of papers, this won't be the only one. There'll be something quite similar that you'll be able to get hold of. I've got this slightly dark bit around here, haven't I? So I'm just working around the side of the face there into that little dark bit. And all I'm doing is just following the curve. So whilst I've been talking, I'm just following the curves, looking for areas that are slightly darker. What we don't want is, we don't want the same colour all the way over the bird, or we're not going to get the idea of the sort of peaks and troughs in the feathers. We're not going to get the idea of that movement over the bird's face. So we want variations in those tones. We want a little bit of contrast there. We want some areas a bit darker, some areas a bit lighter, and that's going to help to suggest the movement. It is more than colour. It's not colour at all. It's these lights and darks, this contrast that's going to help with the movement. I'm going to bring a little bit of this colour around the side here. I'm going to see if I can just dab into, now you don't need to do this because you've probably already been taking your lines out. I just want to dab into that graphite just a little bit and then start to bring this yellow underneath. Working back towards that neck. It's starting to curve over a little bit underneath here, so, and you can see I've got variations in the pencil stroke as well, or in the pencil strokes. Got those variations, which is helping again to create that volume in the feathers. Creates the volume and it helps to create that structure. I'm just dabbing into my graphite lines as I go along because I've tried to leave them as long as possible. But if you don't want to take out your graphite lines, you don't have to. You can always take them out in another drawing in the future, you know. Just don't sort of put yourself too far out of your comfort zone if you don't want to remove those graphite lines. You're still getting all the practice of the realistic drawing, even if the graphite lines are in there. Yes, ideally, eventually you would want to remove them. If you're looking for realistic and looking for realism in your drawings, you do want them to be gone. But we don't have to sort of go from A to Z in the first couple of drawings. You know, leave your graphite lines in and you can always take them out at a later date. So I'm working up this little bit here. Starts to move up and over the neck, so I'm bringing a little bit of the yellow pencil over that neck. There we go. So I've got a layer down. It's not finished. I'm going to have to bring more colour pencil in to, you know, tidy that up and make that look better, but we've started to get a layer of the lovely yellow, and for me I'm using that light yellow ochre, but any yellow you've got, that's fine. I think what I might do before I carry on with this, might just put this beak in, and I think he'll just start to look a little bit more like a chicken then, won't he? So I'm gonna put that beak in. I'm going to come back to my kneadable eraser and I'm going to just take that line back a little bit on the top. So I've just dabbed into that line a little bit on the top. I'm not too worried about the ones on the bottom because it's going to go darker, but I do want to take that line out on the top, so I've just dabbed into that little bit there. I'm going to come back to my warm grey one and I'm going to get a base layer over the whole of this beak. So let's have a look at this. So I'm just going to work around. Remember, we put the little nostril in there. So let's work around, let's do it in sections, and then it helps us to sort of work out what sections what. So that's the top part of the beak. I'm going to work in to the bottom part of the beak. And I'm also going to bring a little dusting of this grey over the top of that beak. But I've put it in sections so that we can sort of work out what section is what right from a very early stage with the really light pencil. And then if we need to make adjustments or change anything at this stage, it's going to be a lot easier obviously if we've got a light pencil, if you know we've drawn it wrong, or we've picked up a wrong line of the line drawing, or you know something that needs adjusting. So we've sort of worked out which section is what now. I'm going to come in with my cinnamon, nice sort of peachy brown pink colour, and just on the top here, so I'm just working in this top section, and I'm going to bring a little bit of the peach over that top little bit of beak there. I'm also with this cinnamon going to work around the edge, the top edge of the beak there. That was the nostril. Let's just add a little bit of pencil under that dark sepia just to bring that nostril in. So I've got the curve that's just going around the back of it, and a little bit of cinnamon there. I'm also going to use the cinnamon underneath in the bottom part of this beak. It's really, really small. There's not a lot I can get in, so I'm just colouring it in. That's it. Colouring it in with a nice even colour. There aren't many areas of the chicken that have got quite a hot sort of bright yellow colour in the fur or the feathers, but this little bit around here is quite bright, so I'm going to go in with my cadmium yellow, any bright sort of yellow that you've got. And it's just this little bit on top of the beak, isn't it? So I'm going to get a lovely bit of quite a bright bit of cadmium yellow in there, and I'm also going to bring it along the top of the beak. So just working along that top bit, that top edge, taking it down and into the chicken's face. So we've just got an extra little bit of colour in there. This is burnt sienna, and I'm going to use this to bring in some of the darker bits into the beak. So the first thing I'm going to do is sweep it along the edge where the top meets the bottom. So I'm just going to work along that graphite line that's there. Now I've got the pencil tipped over. It's a nice sharp pencil. I've got it tipped over so that I can't get that pressure down, and I'm just sort of twisting my wrist, pivoting my wrist to get the curve along that edge there. I'm just going to add an extra little bit into the nostril as well to sort of drag the dark sepia down a little bit. Just on the edge of the beak here, there is a slightly more sort of a brown colour, isn't there? So I'm just going to use this burnt sienna to just bring that little bit of brown bit right on the edge of the beak there. And then working on the bottom part of the beak, I'm going to just start to drag the pencil away from that line that we put in, that edge. I'm just going to start to drag the pencil down towards the outer edge. And make it just a little bit darker. There we go, bring that around. There's also a slightly darker bit there, so I'm going to put that in with the dark sepia. And I'm going to start to bring some feathered texture in along the bottom of this beak. Well, it's sort of coming away from the beak now, isn't it? And it's working down into the face. But I'm starting to bring that in just a little bit. And then let's go back to, we've already got the nostril in there. I'm going to, so right round the top of the this bright yellow bit that we put in, I'm going to start to bring some of this burnt sienna, which is just going to start to put an extra little bit of texture into the beak and into the feathers. I'm going to bring this burnt sienna all the way down to meet the edge of the beak, and then just very gently run that burnt sienna over that top edge of the beak there, but really, really, really gentle. There we go. Whilst I've got this burnt sienna in my hand, I'm going to use it to just bring in, we've got an extra little bit of detail that needs to come in around this eye and around the side of the eye. So let's start on the eye first of all. So this line that we put in, this dark sepia line, I'm going to just sort of work along it and very gently just drag the pencil either down towards the eye or up a little bit away from the eye. Round the front, it's just on this side of the eye, so it's only dots. We're working with a really, really small space, so I'm just adding little dots, bringing it down this way as well, down towards the eye. I'm also going to bring a little bit of it around the side of the eye around here. I'm putting this texture in using those pencil strokes again, where we're sort of flicking the texture off at the end. I'm also going to bring a little bit of this burnt sienna around the back of the eye, and it's so small that, you know, it might just be a sweep of the pencil is all we can get in. I'm also going to bring the burnt sienna down this bit down here. And just work along and under this really dark bit that we put in. So again, I'm just dragging it around. I'm sort of coming around the side of the face, just dragging it with really light pressure. It's just a dusting of the pencil, and then also I'm going to work up and away from that dark line that we put in and just take that around the back. There we go. I'm just running a little bit of the burnt sienna over that iris as well. That's quite a nice colour. There we go. So that was the burnt sienna. I'm going to come into another colour. This is the burnt ochre, and I'm going to bring a little bit of burnt ochre around here, also around here, and also this little bit on the top and at the bottom. I'm just looking now to build up some of the colours in the fur. So let's start on the side of this eye again. Really lightly, just dragging that burnt sienna out. Sorry, yeah, it's just dragging the burnt sienna out, isn't it, with the burnt ochre? Yeah, confused myself there. Let's do this little bit around the back. And then let's do this bit on the top. So I want those pencil strokes to just work up towards the top of the head. There we go. And just very gently encouraging the burnt sienna and that orange colour just around the top corner of the eye there. There we go. Bring a little bit of that burnt sienna under the... it's burnt ochre, isn't it? Sorry, not burnt sienna. Bring a little bit of that burnt ochre under the face as well. And then we're going to bring a little bit of it into this little landmark that we put in right at the start, because we can see we've got a lovely orange bit of feather in there. So I'm just using backwards and forwards pencil strokes and just taking the orange down towards this lovely dark sepia bit. And that'll obviously come out the other side as well. This bit up here has obviously got some dark brown or darker brown in there. So this is the burnt umber from the Polychromos range again. And I'm going to use it again with those pencil strokes that are just going backwards. I'm going to darken down part of this feather area at the top. Start of the pattern that the adult chick will probably end up with. We've hatched chicks in the past. We've had chickens for probably like the past 20 years, and it's lovely to see how their patterns change as they go from being these fluffy little balls of fluff really into these lovely chickens, hens, or quite often cockerels as well. Roosters in our case. We never really got many females when we hatched the chickens, and of course we kept them all, so we had to sort of have several areas all with different cockerels, all with different girls, because obviously they live together, the boys live together by themselves when they're younger. In fact, they live together okay in our experience when there aren't girls around, but then eventually they get their girls, and then that's when they need to be split up really. I'm just going to bring this burnt umber in around this bit of the eye again, just darkening that down just a little bit, starting to get a bit more depth and a bit more structure around the eye. And you'll see that I keep going back and I keep topping areas up, and that's fine. It's really good to just sort of, in my opinion, not just sort of start at the top and work down, just let it grow quite organically. And if you do that, you don't need, again, this is just my opinion because I know everybody works differently, but what works for me, if you do that, if you let it grow organically, so you might move from here to here, to here, rather than just sort of working at the top, you never feel that, or you never need to call the area finished. And if you don't need to call the area finished until your drawing's actually finished at the end and you put your pencils down, you never need to worry about whether it's right or not. You take out that stress of worrying about whether something is right or wrong, because you can go back and adjust it. So I sort of have that mindset that yes, I'm doing it, no, it's not finished, I can go back, I can adjust it, and I don't need to worry about it. Don't need to worry that something's perfect before I move on. I'm just going to soften out this dark bit in here. We put it in with the dark sepia, and I'm just going to work along that line just a little bit to soften that, and I shall soften it on the other side as well. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this light yellow ochre, and I'm just going to work over it again and just sort of blend things out a little bit. So I'm going to start here again on this one side. I'm going to let the pencil go over that burnt sienna and the burnt ochre, drag it around in the direction that these feathers are going. Just softening bits out as I need to. Now, because the pencil's gone down lightly, I don't know if you saw there, I could just run my pencil backwards and forwards. There, I'll do it again. And it just softens out the the pencil that's gone down underneath. It just blends it out a little bit and softens it. Now that's because I put the pencil down lightly underneath. If I'd have put the pencil down with really hard pressure, I wouldn't have been able to have done that. Because when you put the pencil down with really strong pressure, it pushes it down into the tooth of the paper, and that's a lot harder then to blend. Because obviously if you've pushed it down, you can't push it around. Well, not as easy anyway. You end up having to press on harder to blend things, and then it all starts to get, you know, quite hard. There are, you know, times when you might need to press on a little bit harder, and it will depend on your paper as well. You know, if you're working on something like perhaps like a Bristol board or a much sort of harder surface, you might find that you do need to press on a little bit harder. So I can only tell you what's working for this paper that I'm working on, you know, at this moment in time. Papers are different, and, you know, you'll need to perhaps adjust to suit the paper and the pencils that you're using as well. I'm just going to soften out these feathers at the top. I'm not being too careful about it. You can see I'm not being too careful. I'm just keeping that pencil light in terms of pressure so that I'm not pressing on too hard at any one time, so that I can just blend things out. But I'm not being too precious about the pencil strokes that are going down. And I've obviously got some of my graphite lines showing, and you wouldn't necessarily have those showing through with yours, but I don't mind. It's just a little study of a chicken. Bring the feathers around. So I'm blending over everything really. I'm curving, I'm making sure that the pencil strokes are curving round. So even though I'm not being too fussy about it, I am making sure that the feathers curve around, the pencil strokes curve around in the right direction. Because otherwise, I'm not going to create the structure of the head. There we go. I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and just pull through a few highlights. So I've shaped it into a pencil again, and I'm going to drag. It doesn't matter whether you drag or whether you tap it. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you and is working on your paper. But I'm just going to bring a few little highlights through, and that also helps with the volume. I'm going to tap it up here, bring a little bit up here right at the top. I'm going to make sure it's nice and soft on the edge of his face there, or her face. And let's just bring a little bit of highlight under the cheek there. And actually I was just dabbing out a little bit of a graphite line under the cheek there as well. Just bring this around, just sort of dabbing it or dragging it in that direction. It's looking like a chicken. That's what we want it to look like. I don't need to worry about whether it's absolutely, you know, correct. That's okay. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so I've added a few highlights. I'm going to just go in with the white now and just sort of smooth it together a little bit, and then we're going to move down onto his body. I'm going to use my Polychromos white. It's really, really small, so I'm going to put it into a pencil extender. These are really, really good for prolonging the life of your pencils. And again, I don't want to press on hard. I'm just going to bring the areas together a little bit with the white. Now I'm not looking to make things white. What I'm looking to do is to just blend and push the pigment around, push it together, blend out some of the areas. Just working backwards and forwards. There we go. I'm going to take the burnt sienna and just darken this bit down around here. But even though I'm going to move on to the body, I can still come back and I can still adjust it and change bits if I need to. So that will do. I don't want to make this too long either, so this project too long. So that'll do for the minute with the top of the chick. Let's move down onto his body and we'll have a look whether we need to come back and adjust this afterwards. Okay, let's have a look at the body. I'm going to do all of the body in one go, apart from this little wing. So I'm going to work all the way under the wing and around the back, but I'm just going to leave the wing and I'll look at that afterwards. I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and dab into this a little bit. Again, I'll probably leave some of the graphite lines in which you'll probably want to take out. But I'm trying to leave them in so that you can see where I'm working. There we go. I've taken out as much as I can. That's sort of disappearing off the screen now. Okay, let's come in with the coal grey first because there aren't as many places. I'm going to put the coal grey one here, underneath here, just at the back here, and a little bit around here, and then the rest of it's going to be a warm grey one. So let's bring in some of the base layer. Again, I want to work in the direction that I can see these feathers are working out in, so they're working along the back. I'm just using these backwards and forwards pencil strokes again, so back to these pencil strokes, but of course you could use your oval strokes if you're struggling to get a nice even layer. Let me just get rid of that little bit of graphite right on the back there. There we go. I said I was going to bring a little bit down here, didn't I? So again, I'm not being too fussy or too precious with the base layer. It's just a nice even coverage that I'm looking for. And I also said I was going to use it under here, didn't I? So let's bring this down. Now on the edge, when I get to the edge, I will want to just sort of flick out a few pencil strokes to just feather out. There we go. And then the rest of it is going to be the warm grey. So we can just sort of cover over the rest of it now with a nice even application of this warm grey. Still working in the direction that the feathers are going in. There's a lot of graphite in there on mine, but if I take that out, you're not going to see where on earth I'm working. So it's sort of quite difficult on drawing something really quite light on the camera, because of course, you know, the camera, although I can sort of see what I'm working on the board, the camera doesn't always pick that up. So I have to leave the lines just a little bit darker. And then of course they show through. I'm trying to take them out as I go along. So I'm going to work all the way down to this little pattern here. Work along the back. I'm just going to take the back bit out as well, towards the back there. Let's just work down all the way to the edge. Hopefully you can just about see that. See the edge there? It's on the line drawing anyway, so you'll know where to stop. Okay, so we've got the greys down, and just like before, I'm going to go in with the cream, and I'm going to just add a little bit of creaminess. It isn't it's sort of as yellow as it is up here, but I'm still going to get a little bit of this cream in just to sort of bring the colour through from the head. So we've got this lovely triangle of quite a yellow colour actually around here, working around the back of the neck. And then when we get onto the back, so this is the sort of neckline there, and then when we get onto the back, we're starting to have the feathers go up and over. So these feathers are working up and over the back. We've got this lighter bit here, so I'm leaving that back to this triangle that's in the middle. And this just makes sense for me to sort of, you know, the way that I'm working around. But of course you can add this in any order. You can work any order around the chicken. It doesn't matter. It's just easier for me. This bit here is, there's a little bit of a dip there. It's the sort of the start of the wing, I think. So there's a little bit of a dip there. So I'm just going to bear that in mind, that this bit around here, that line there, is going to be a little bit darker to start that dip going. And if you're very new to colour pencils, one thing that I would suggest that you practice until you're comfortable with it is this backwards and forwards, or even just the circular colouring in. Let's just call it colouring, so that you can get this really even pressure, because that's going to be useful in just about every drawing that you do, every colour pencil drawing that you do. You know, whether it's just laying down a base layer, or whether it's just putting in, you know, a large coverage of pencil, it's going to be really useful if you can get it to go down in a really even way. It does take a bit of practice. I find, can you see there that I've got that flat end? I call that a chisel tip on the end of the pencil, and I find that that really helps, because you see you've got quite a lot of pencil in contact with the paper, so it really helps getting a nice even coverage. I'm going to leave these sort of lighter areas for the minute. It doesn't mean to say that I'm not going to go back and put pencil in there, but I'll leave them for the minute. Let's just work around the back, get a little bit of colour in at the back of that wing there. There we go. All along and under the chicken here, you can see it's more of sort of a peachy colour. I'm going to use a combination of the cinnamon and the burnt ochre to bring that sort of peachiness underneath his tummy. So I'm going to use the cinnamon first. I'm going to work back up towards, or start back up towards the beak, so that I can bring it all the way down. Now I'm plotting the shape in first of all, so you can see that I'm just working that pencil backwards and forwards. It's tipped over, so there's not much pencil that's going down on the paper, but I'm just plotting in shape with this cinnamon pencil. When I do get to the edge, I will remember to sort of feather it out a little bit, and I want a nice feathered bit right on the edge to represent those fuzzy feathers. And then let me just take out, that's a really strong bit of graphite there, right on the edge. And then just work around and under this tummy. using it to shape some of the face as well. But really lightly, I'm not pressing on hard at all. The nice thing about this particular paper is that the pencils do glide over the paper, so it does help you get a nice even coverage, a nice smooth coverage as well. There's just enough texture for you to put quite a few layers on. It does take quite a few layers. I was actually quite surprised at how many layers it does take. It takes, you know, several layers, quite a few layers, but there's not much texture that shows through. So if you don't want to put lots of layers down, you don't have to, because you don't have to work through all of that texture. And sometimes the texture is nice anyway. You don't always need to get rid of the texture. But if you do want the texture gone, but you don't want to have to put lots of layers down, and not everybody wants to sit there for hours and hours drawing, you know, with lots of layers, this does help you sort of speed up the process, because there isn't that much texture there to keep trying to work through. I'm just bringing this cinnamon all the way under this tummy towards this back leg. There we go. And then I'm going to use the burnt ochre and pretty much just go over it and do the same. Bring the burnt ochre in and over this cinnamon, and you can see it's just tipping it towards a little bit of a peachy colour. And with the burnt ochre, all I'm doing really is putting a glaze. I want to keep it all quite light. I don't want it to take a lot of time, and I want to keep it quite sort of quite soft in appearance. So I don't want to put a lot of pencil down. I'm just adding a glaze to just tip the cinnamon towards this peach colour. Still paying attention though to the direction of the fur. Well, I say the fur, it's the feathers, isn't it? There we go, got that down the side, I know. Let's come back to our lovely light yellow ochre, our really sort of earthy yellow colour. And I'm going to bring in some of this light yellow ochre into this back, and also just tie it in with the head as well. So let's bring some of this in. Let me just see if I can take out that graphite line there, because otherwise that's going to really sort of show through. Just dabbing into it a little bit. So I'm running that pencil backwards and forwards in the direction. So as I'm moving towards the front of the chicken, it's coming around this way. And then working the pencils over the back, towards that back a little bit. Let's bring a little bit of colour with this light yellow ochre down here. It's just a glaze. I'm not being too precious about it. As I said, I have just taken, let me just put, that needs to be a little bit lighter there, so I'm just going to take that bit out there. I just made that a little bit darker, because if you remember I said this was the edge of the wing. take this light yellow ochre all the way down to that peach colour that we've just mixed with the cinnamon and the burnt ochre. Just topping up any colours that I can see need to be topped up. Let's take this yellow down to the bottom down here, over that lovely peach colour. And I can see that I need to tie the head in a little bit with the neck and the body, so I'm going to just go back and bring this over a little bit now. Join these two areas up a little bit. There we go. Where we added the base layer, these lighter areas, I haven't actually brought anything into those areas yet, so I'm going to just use this same pencil. This is the light yellow ochre, and I'm going to use it to just add a little bit of texture into this space, but I still want the lighter colour underneath to show through. So I'm just using this pencil to break up the space, because obviously, you know, it's quite a big area. Break up the space, but still make it look lighter by letting the other colours, or the lighter colours underneath, come through. There we go. So I've just done that little bit there. Let's just do this little bit over here. Do the same with this bit. Just let it really gently feather over this light yellow ochre. Let it feather over down the back, but letting that lovely colour underneath show through. There we go. And that's not bad actually. That's got quite a nice bit of coverage on there without, we haven't put too much sort of colour, too many layers, too much texture in there. I am just going to come back to my cold grey one, and I'm just going to soften areas again. So for instance, I'll just bring the cold grey one around here and just soften these areas a little bit. I'm also going to bring it into this bit here. Just to blend, just to bring that together and blend that, but in the direction that the fur, or the feathers, I keep saying fur, don't I, the feathers. There we go. Same on the back up here. We've already done that a little bit, but let's just bring it into this bit with this cold grey, really gentle blending. And this little bit at the back here. So all I'm doing is just softening out what I've put down, really. That's all I'm doing there. I'm going to use the warm grey one as well, and this little bit around the back. Just soften that out. And when I get to the edge, just let that pencil lift off at the edge, just to create a nice soft finish. I haven't used this colour before. This is Cold Grey 3, but there are areas, so for instance up here, round this part of this wing that I was talking about, a little bit on the front where I can see that it's just a little bit more grey. So I'm going to use this Cold Grey 3 to really gently, I've got it tipped over on the side because it's such a small pencil. That's the reason that I've got it tipped over like this. But I'm just going to use it to bring in a little bit of just a slightly darker value here and there to just shape some of the features. And I'm holding it like that because it's small. If it was a really long pencil, I'd just be holding it over, you know, like that. I wouldn't be holding it upright. Keep it quite relaxed, and then you can just get a nice little bit of a darker value here and there. So let's just look at where we can darken bits down. So under here, for instance, I'm using the grey because we're keeping this to quite a limited palette. I mean, I can see that there are some sort of lovely greens and things coming through, but I'm not going to go into that because I want to keep it to quite a limited palette. But I'm just softening out and sort of cooling areas just a little bit so that I can get a bit more depth. Let's bring a little bit of it around under here. Again, I've just got the pencil tipped over on the side. I just want to bring in a slightly cooler value underneath here. Going to work along. Just going to work along the bottom of these feathers just a little bit. So sort of working where the feathers meet the cinnamon and the burnt ochre colour. Let's have a look. I said I was going to do a little bit around here. This is where there's just bit of an edge on this wing here. I'm using the cold grey. I can still go back and put, like, you know, something like the bistre if I want to warm it up a little bit. So just because I'm putting the cold grey down doesn't mean to say that I can't go back into this area and, you know, bring some of the feather colours back in again. Just wanted to add little something around that wing there. I'm going to be working down onto this pattern bit in a minute, but we've got a little bit of this blue. I say blue, it's like a blue grey, isn't it? I'm going to also bring in the burnt umber and just tidy things up a little bit. So for instance, around here, I can see that I can just work this feather structure just a little bit around here. Now you may not need to do this. I can just tell that I need to just refine the feathers around here a little bit, and I'm going to just bring little scribbles. So this time all I'm doing are just like little scribbles like that to just bring through a little bit of texture. Now I don't want to put too much texture in here because I don't want it getting too tight. But I'm just going to bring a little bit of texture here and there so that it's obvious that it is, you know, it's feathers, so that it's obvious that it's a little bird. But again, not pressing on hard, just little bits here and there. And I won't take it too much further in this tutorial, but you can just keep working on this a little bit. It will, you know, you can keep developing it a little bit. And people quite often say to me, you know, when is the time to stop? When do you stop? And My answer would be that when you feel like you're putting marks down and they're not doing anything, you're not adding anything, that's the time to stop, really. You feel like you're not adding anything more to it. And that's the time to stop, because very soon after that point, that's when you'll start taking it backwards. You know, you won't improve it, you'll just start to make it worse. So when you get to that stage where you think, actually, I'm not adding anything else to this now, that's where I would suggest you're going to want to stop. I'm going to bring in some of the burnt ochre, and never made this bit darker here, did I? So this is the burnt ochre, and I need to make this area darker around here where this neck is. So yeah, so I would say when you get to that stage where you think, and sometimes you have to sort of stop even before that stage and perhaps just, you know, go away and have a look at it, or you know, go away, have a cup of tea, or leave it overnight, or leave it for a couple of hours, and then come back. And sometimes when you look at it with fresh eyes, and I've done that quite a lot as well, when I thought perhaps I didn't like something, I've drawn something, I haven't liked it, I've put it up, I just said, oh, you know, I'll just leave it there for the day. Come back and look at it the next day and think, why on earth didn't I like it? It's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. So sometimes you just need to look at things with a fresh pair of eyes. I'm just darkening down this area around here. That needs to just be a little bit darker. I'm also going to bring in a little bit of this burnt ochre to sort of break these feathers up here. So I'm just running that backwards and forwards, running that pencil backwards and forwards. And I just want just the suggestion of the feathers, really. They don't have to be right at all. It's just that suggestion. I'm going to use the burnt sienna and soften that out just a little bit more. Just that dark bit around that neck there. So I'm pretty much here with the feathers. This is a bit of Bista, and I'm just going to run a little bit of Bista through the space here and there, just to break up those feathers again. But I don't want to put too much in, so I'm just using feathered pencil strokes, little flicks of the pencil. Bringing a little bit through here and there, and you can keep going back and just adjusting things if you feel that you need to adjust it. Let's bring a little bit of this brown in around here. So yeah, you might need to just take your kneadable eraser and you might need to just pull through a couple of highlights again. You don't have to. Pull through a highlight anywhere that you feel that you might need it. I'm just going to pull through a little bit of a highlight over that space there. Just soften that a little bit. There we go. That's the lovely thing about the kneadable eraser, that you can see it just adds texture, which is quite hard to sort of put in manually, because the eraser just sort of picks bits up, leaves bits in a really random way. So it's really useful at just adding bits of texture as well as erasing the lines. I find it really, really useful. Okay, I'm not going to spend too long on this wing at all, because I don't want it to get too complicated. I'm going to dab out just a little bit of the line drawing, and to be honest, we don't really need to worry about the line drawing there, because we're going to go over that with some really dark pencils now. But I'm going to use my cold grey one and get a base layer down. So what I would say is when you put your base layer down, make sure you can see your line drawing underneath, because otherwise you'll need to freehand draw that in. So you don't want to lose that line drawing. So I'm going to get a base layer down in this space. It's really, really light at the top, but remember we can drag out some highlights again. One thing I will do is I'm going to just dab the edge of that wing out at the back there. There we go. Okay, so I've got the base layer down. I'm going to go in and put a little bit of blue into this space. Now you can use any blue that you've got, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go in with the light ultramarine, but you could use the sky blue, any sort of light blue you've got, really doesn't matter. I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue, this light ultramarine, in areas. So I'm going to bring a little bit of it around here. I'm just working over all of the pattern, the light and the dark pattern. That'll probably do with a little bit up there. Just wherever you can see that there is a touch of this blue, which really sort of is around here and around here. We can always go back and add a little bit more. So I've added a little bit of blue into that wing. And it doesn't really matter, I've gone over the pattern, but I've made sure that the pencil's gone in the direction that the wing's going in. I'm going to use my dark sepia and I'm going to bring this pattern in now. There is a little bit of lovely brown in areas, and I'll be bringing in a little bit of the burnt sienna, maybe a bit of the burnt umber, those sort of colours as well. But what I want to do is take the dark sepia and just follow around the pattern, but in the direction that these feathers are going in. Now, don't worry too much about the pattern. Don't worry if you think that, or you feel that you are getting lost. It doesn't matter. The only important thing is whatever pattern you put in, it's got to sort of go in the direction of the feathers. So it's got to work from the top and sort of curve around the body a little bit. I wouldn't worry if you're losing the pattern. You're not going to sort of know that in the finished drawing. And it's also quite sort of diffused anyway, so you can't really even see the pattern. I'm not trying really, really hard to make this pattern absolutely perfect. It doesn't matter. I just want to build in a little bit of the pattern. And you see, do you see how I've not sort of started at the top and worked down. I'm picking out the bits of the pattern that are the easiest for me to spot. And then that means you create yourself landmarks. And then that makes it easier. Once you've got these landmarks in place, it makes it easier to sort of fill in the bits in between that might have been quite hard to sort of work out if we had to work those out first, if that makes sense. And you know, I may not have this right, it doesn't matter, I really don't mind. It's just something to suggest that we've got this pattern on this wing. And I'm just using little taps of the pencil. I'm keeping the pencil pressure really light. First of all, because I don't want it to get too heavy and sort of overtake everything. But secondly, if it's light and if I have made a really terrible mistake and I do need to erase something, then it's a lighter colour. You know, it's light pressure, the pencil's light, and it'll be easier to do that. Having said that though, just because you've made a mistake doesn't mean that you need to, you know, grab your eraser straight away. Quite often you can just sort of work around it or push the pencil in a different way or, you know, adjust things without reaching for that eraser. Sometimes you have to, but not always. I'm just going to bring this pattern up and into the feathers just a little bit, and that's probably all the pattern that I need in there, certainly for the minute. I might need to sort of top it up a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to leave that like that. I'm going to bring in some of the colours of the feathers. I'm going to be using the light yellow ochre because I can see that there's a little bit of yellow colour around there. I said I was going to use burnt sienna, but I think it might be a little bit strong. I think I might use a bit of the burnt ochre because there's a bit of a darker colour down here, and I might use a little bit of the burnt umber, or maybe go to the burnt sienna as the darker colour. But let me blend that. Now before I do that, I'm just going to really lightly dab over that dark sepia that I've put down, just in case there's any really dark crumbs. I don't want it to smudge. So this is the light yellow ochre, and I'm going to work where I can see that there's a little bit of this yellow colour coming through. And again, it doesn't have to be. I'm not worried if it's not perfect. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to get a little bit of colour in there. There we go. Let's take this down here as well. I'm going to come back with my kneadable eraser and just dab into that bit a little bit. I've probably made that a bit strong there. That's a bit better. Then I'm going to use my burnt ochre and again work in the direction that the feathers are going in, and just darken down under that feather as well. So a little bit of shadow. Under that wing there. Bring that down. Now I've got quite a strong line on the top of my wing there. Now that I've put everything in, I'm going to dab that out because it needed to go, but I tried to leave it in so that you could see where I was working. There's also a tiny little spot on the line drawing there, so I'm just coming back to my dark sepia. You've probably put that in, but I needed to just add that little bit in. So then all we're going to do is just soften this out a little bit, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to blend with the cold grey one. I'll probably bring a little bit of the white in as well. I may bring a little bit of that light ultramarine in again, but I may not. Let's just see how it goes. Because my pattern's looking quite strong and on the reference photograph it's really quite diffused, I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and really gently just sort of sweep it over the top of that that wing there. And then I'm going to take my cold grey one and I'm going to just bring this together a little bit. I'm going to let the pencil go over the darker colour as well as the light areas. Take it up and into the body a little bit and bring it down the side of the body. Just bringing that touch of cooler grey through the area. So I'm taking it around into that little bit that I said was the start of the wing, and then take it back. And I'm sort of leaving the top bit. I'm going to leave that top bit a little bit lighter. I don't want to take the cold grey into that top bit. I want it to look quite sort of soft up there, just to create that real sort of the faded lost edge on the edge of the chicken, because obviously he's going back. I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit. Let's just have a look. Okay, so I'm just going to pull out a couple of highlights where I think that it might need it. I'm going to bring a little bit of a highlight around here. Not much. Just bring that little bit of highlight in. I've said I'm going to use the white, and I am going to use the white in a second, but I'm also going to bring in my warm grey one because I can see that this needs to be blended around here with that warm grey one. Make this part of the wing a little bit warmer. And even if the coal grey is underneath, that's fine. I can put the coal grey over the top of the warm grey. It doesn't make it go straight away from cold to warm. What it does is it just neutralises the grey a little bit. So it tips it back towards the warmer scale a little bit. And again, whilst I'm talking, and I'm always sort of thinking, where can I blend whilst I've got the pencil in my hand? Is there anywhere else that I can blend? So I've just run it around that little bit again. Okay. I'm going to use that burnt sienna that I said I wasn't sure whether I was going to use or not, and I'm just going to make it a little bit darker around here. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit of the darker brown. I don't need much. And I'm still holding this white in my hand that I said I was going to use. I'm going to use it in a second now. Just going to bring a little bit of this pattern through. There we go. Don't need much. And then I'm going to bring it together with this white. So just using either pencil strokes that are going down towards the direction that all the feather strokes have gone in, or sometimes it's useful to use circular strokes to blend. Now, as to when you want to use which, it really depends on whether you're happy with your lines that have gone down underneath. So here, for instance, those lines are just a little bit strong, and we know that it's quite blurry on the top. So by using circular strokes, I can just soften out and make the pencil lines just a little bit more fuzzy. So circular strokes can be really, really useful. But here, for instance, I'm quite happy with, you know, the pencil lines going that way. I don't really want to move them around too much. So I'll blend in the same direction that I put the previous pencil lines down in. And that's how I decide whether I'm going to blend with circular strokes or strokes that are going in the direction of the pencil that's gone down before it. And that's pretty much it for the wing. I wanted to keep it, I'm just back to this light ultramarine, but that's pretty much it. I wanted to keep it really quite simple. Don't want to get caught up in the pattern. Just want something there that looks like it could be the pattern. So I'm going to leave that like that, and I'm going to work down on this these legs. I will just take my dark sepia again though, and now that I've sort of finished the pattern, I'm just going to run a couple of lines through in the direction that this wing is going in. So I'm sort of curving it a little bit and just putting a bit of direction on the wing. And that's all that's needed. That'll be fine. Just darkening down this little bit down here. Got my pencil really, really tipped over so that it's light. Everything that's going down is light, but it's just shaped the top of that wing just a little bit. That'll be fine. That's all I'm going to do. This is back to the light yellow ochre, and I will just take the pencil with tiny circular strokes just to put a glaze around the back of that wing, so that we can see where the wing sort of stops and starts a little bit. There we go. That will do. And I'll also just soften out this bit right down the bottom down here. Just on the back there. There we go. So I think that is okay for the wing, and you can keep, you know, adding little highlights in if you need to, but I'm quite happy with that now. That will do. And just because you put pencil down and then you're taking sort of pencil, or you're using the kneadable eraser, it's not going backwards, because you can see I'm not taking all the pencil back off, just taking some of the pencil off, leave some of it down, and that also really helps with the texture. Okay, so we are there with that. Let me just cover that a little bit up. Let's have a look at these legs, and then we're pretty much finished, aren't we? I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and just dab in to these legs. Don't want too much graphite in there, but hopefully you can see them again. I'm going to take my warm grey one and I'm going to get a coverage down on these legs. Take it all the way down to the ends of each toe. Not going to put too much into these, don't need to put too much in, they're quite sort of diffused. Same here as well. So that's the base layer down. Again, I've got the pencil tipped over on the side, so it's a nice sort of even coverage there. I'm going to come back to my light yellow ochre, and I'm going to work all the way down the top part of this leg. I'm also going to work on this toe. I can go into those toenails as well, because it's going to go so dark. I can, you know, go over those afterwards. Now, just on the top of this toe here is a slightly lighter bit, so I'm just going to keep out of that bit. If you go into it, it's fine. You can, you know, take it out with an eraser afterwards, but I'm just going to stay out of that top bit. There's also a light bit there, and so I'm going to stay out of that, and also I'm just going to bring a little bit down on that back foot there. Same on this one again. Now, again, it's on the line drawing, so we've got this dark bit at the top, and then sort of runs down that left-hand side. There's a lighter bit in the middle, and then the yellow runs down the right-hand side. So I'm not doing anything but just following what's on that line drawing. And then again, there's a slightly lighter bit on the top part of that foot there, on that toe. And let's work down this way. So you can see I'm not putting too much in. I'm not, you know, getting really sort of overwhelmed with what's in these legs and these feet. It's quite diffused anyway, you can't really see much. All I've done is just sort of left the lighter areas that I can see from the line drawing, but you can always go in with an eraser and adjust this. I'm going to pretty much go over the same space that I've just put the yellow in with the cinnamon, so it's quite easy. I'm just going into the areas because I'm mixing this sort of peach colour, so I'm going to use the cinnamon to tip these colours towards a bit of a peach colour. And I'm keeping the pressure really light. You can see I've put that down quite quickly. I don't want to worry too much about these legs. There we go. So I've put a little bit of peach in there. I'm going to use my burnt sienna to bring the darker bit of the legs in. On the reference photograph, it is a little bit more of a sort of pinky reddy colour. If you want to, so I'm going to use this because it's the same sort of colour that is up in the beak, and I use this for the beak. But if you would prefer, if you want to, you could use something like, this is Venetian red. This is just caput mortuum. Again, from the polychromos, you could bring that sort of pinky orangey red colour in if you want to. But I'm going to keep this as quite a limited palette. Let me just put those back down. And I'm going to use my burnt sienna, which is going to work quite nicely. So I'm going to, and I can always put a bit more cinnamon into it if I want to tip it towards the pink colour, but I'm going to just feather the legs under the fur. the feathers, sorry, for a start. Let's bring this down. I'm going to just work along the bottom of that toe there. There's a dark bit, so I'm using this now to pick out the dark bits. There's a dark bit right where the sort of webbed bit is between the toe there, the two toes. Let's bring this burnt sienna down this way. And the chickens do have really quite large legs, don't they? I've got the pencil tipped over so that I've got really, really light pressure, because I don't want this burnt sienna to take over. I want the other colours underneath to show through. So I've got the pencil tipped over on its side. I'm just looking for the darker areas. Like I say, I'm using the burnt sienna for all of it. You could bring in those pinker colours if you wanted to. But if I want to tip this towards say purple, if I want to tip this towards a pinky red colour, I can just add in some of the cinnamon. I'm going to do the same on this one. Let's just let that pencil feather up and into the feathers on this one as well. Let's bring that down, darker on this side. Let's just darken underneath the feet. Again, I've got this slightly darker bit here with the webbed bit. There we go. Bringing that down. You can see I'm not being too fussy about it. I don't want to be too fussy. I just want to keep these pencil strokes quite loose. I will just take this burnt sienna and just create a bit of texture there. There we go. So I've brought some of those darker bits in. I'm going to come back to my light yellow ochre and I'm just going to go over that again. So, and this time I will bring a little bit of light yellow ochre into those lighter areas as well. Just a touch. Just want a nice, even coverage. Same on this side. Let's just soften this out a little bit as well. Now that bit there I can see is quite cool, so I'm going to bring a little bit of the coal grey down there. I'm just going to take the pencil on the outside and then I'll bring a little bit of the coal grey. So I'm just blending out the burnt sienna, blending the feathers towards the top as well, into the body. I'm going to use the cold grey and I'll just bring a touch of the cold grey down there, and I'll also just bring a little bit of the cold grey down that side as well. I'm going to darken down this bit here and this bit here with the burnt umber. So let's bring in a little bit of the burnt umber. Let the burnt umber just feather up and into those feathers that are there. Just darkening down a little bit. So looking for the bits on the bottom of the foot that could just be a little bit darker. There's not much that's going into here. Let's just darken this bit. Can always go in and add that red in, like I said, that caput mortuum. It's like a lovely sort of earthy red, the caput mortuum or the Venetian red, anything that you've got that's quite an earthy colour. That's all it needs to be, quite an earthy colour, because you can see we've kept this chick to quite earthy, sort of desaturated colours, rather than making it really, really bright. Let's just bring a little bit of the brown in, and all I'm really doing is just looking to put a bit of structure into the legs. That will probably do, actually. I think that's pretty much enough information in there so that we can see that they are legs. What I will do is I'll just take my cream and I'll just bring these together a little bit. Just run that over. Bring some of these colours together. And I'm also just going to take my burnt ochre and just add a little bit of orange, or, you know, like I say, you could also bring in that cinnamon. That colour would work. Just softening out. And I'm not paying, I'm obviously being careful, but you know, I'm not worried if I've not got everything in the right place. It doesn't matter. We've got something that gives a suggestion of the feet of the chicken. If you need to, you can obviously take your kneadable eraser and you can go back in and add highlights. So if I just show you here, you can sort of drag a highlight back in there a little bit, wherever you need to. And whether you tap or dab, that's entirely up to you. The only thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, I think I'm going to take the Bista, and I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow underneath it to just sort of ground the chicken. So I've got my pencil tipped over on the side and I'm going to run it along the ground horizontally, just to add the tiniest suggestion of the dirt that he's obviously, or she is on. Just take that behind his feet a little bit. I will just go in with the dark sepia and just under his feet, just add a slightly darker bit where the shadow under his feet would be. So I'm just sort of running it around under his feet and then letting that fade out. I don't want to put too much into here at all. It's just a suggestion of the ground. And I think that will probably do for this little drawing. But yeah, I think that is probably going to do for this little drawing. I've got the burnt umber again, and I'm just going to work through, bring in any little bits of texture, little scribbles, darken bits down that might need it, but there isn't much that needs to be done really. I think for this tutorial at least, I think I'm going to leave that like that. I really hope that you have enjoyed drawing this little chicken with me. He's small enough so that you could put him on a card if that's what you wanted to do. But yeah, I've gone through everything that I wanted to show you in the tutorial. So, you know, obviously you can keep working on yours if you want to keep working on it. That's entirely up to you. But and I will always have a look around mine after I've turned the camera off. I always do, because chances are I always see little bits that need adjusting perhaps, that I couldn't see when the lights of the video were shining on the project. But anything that I adjust will be really quite small. I'm going to leave that there. If you have enjoyed this project, then don't forget to subscribe over on YouTube so that you don't miss any new content and tutorials as they come out. And if you would like to do more full step-by-step tutorials, then you might want to think about joining me on Patreon, where you can find lots of real-time, step-by-step tutorials across lots of subjects, different surfaces as well to draw on. So that might be for you. So I'm going to leave this little chick like this. Really hope that you have enjoyed drawing in with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.